Pretend the tale of Sweeney Todd.
Pretend the tale of Sweeney Todd.
He served a dog and a hungry god.
He served a dog and a hungry god.
This is Theater Talk. I'm Susan Haskins. Our guests are the two brilliant stars of the most magnificent revival, or really reconception, of a musical that Broadway has seen in a long, long time. Here to introduce them, Michael Riedel, Broadway columnist of the New York Post.
My favorite show this season is John Doyle's terrific revival of Sweeney Todd, and two of the reasons that it is so compelling are here with us today. We are delighted to be joined by the Mrs. Lovett of this revival, Patti LuPone. Welcome to Theater Talk.
Thank you very much.
And the terrifying Sweeney Todd himself, who in person doesn't look quite so frightening, Michael Cerveris. Nice. Welcome to Theater Talk, both of you, and congratulations on two really terrific performances.
Thank you.
Now, Michael, I know you've worked with Steve Sondheim before in Assassins, but you've done some Sondheim concerts, but in all the years you've been on Broadway, you never did a Stephen Sondheim musical. Did he ever want you to do something? Was there ever a discussion about doing something?
There was. I auditioned for, no, they actually offered me the witch in the original Into the Woods, but I wanted to play Cinderella. And so this is true. Totally true. And so Steve and James had me come in and read Cinderella, and at the end they said, yeah, but we still want you to play the witch.
And you said no.
Well, no, and then the negotiations broke down.
Now, how did you get involved in this Sweeney Todd?
I met with John Doyle. We had a breakfast meeting. This is the first thing I've done where I didn't have to, trot out an audition and do everything. Although getting up at 9 o'clock for a breakfast meeting was probably tougher than any audition I've done anyway. So I met with John Doyle, and we sort of had this immediate sort of affinity, and we talked a lot about the production, and he described it to me, and then the conversation just sort of went into what we liked about theater and what we cared about in theater and ways that we'd become disillusioned in theater. And I think we both realized early on that we were sort of very much on the same page. And I guess they felt, because I had done Assassins, and then Patti and I had just done Passion for Lincoln Center recently, I guess the feeling was they knew what I could do, so I didn't need to come in and sing and everything.
One of the remarkable things about your performances in Sweeney Todd is this tremendous chemistry the two of you have. Now, was this apparent to both of you the first time you worked together at these Sondheim concerts?
It was, actually.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah,
and that's not something that you can sort of rehearse or come up with. I mean, it's just you click on a certain level and you know it right away.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just an organic thing that happens on stage. It's not like Michael and I even hang out together. You know what I mean? And I'm sure we'd have a ball if we do, but but it's.
We spent a lot of time at the Hilton Bar, though. Or the Hyatt, I guess it was.
Hyatt Bar in Chicago. Now the Renaissance, they're changing hotels.
Oh, really? I date our relationship really to those, those late night at the end of the day rehearsals.
Right, exactly. I can't recall having this kind of a connection on stage with another actor this deep. It's as if there is some sort of soulmate thing happening, and we've known each other in some other life, because there is the permission for danger, and there is the safety net, and there is, I think, mutual great respect for one another,
Absolutely.
Love and support, and it's not discussed. And that is I think those are the components of chemistry, I think.
This, doing Sweeney for us, is really exciting because we got to have an entire rehearsal process and really sort of dig everything up. And now we get to do a nice, long, healthy run and continue to explore and play and, take chances and everything.
That's key. At this point in the run, the show, well, I think the show can go south the second week of its run. But at this point in our run, when Michael and I start the Sweeney Lovett scenes, this first one, and I look at Michael, it's something new. It's sort of like, my God, it's an acting lesson all over again. It's like a classroom every night on stage, in the best sense, with the best teacher, because again, it's fresh. It stays within the parameter of the scene, but it's fresh and it's exciting, and I can feel the audience. They do it the minute Michael pops his head out of the coffin.
Yes.
And that first scene. But when I'm on stage in a scene, I can feel the energy pump on the stage, and it just supports that ability to create new stuff in a scene. It's
So
really
what beyond
unbelievable.
the relationship between you two is keeping it fresh
Well,
at this
it's-
point? And what is this, the 6th month or something
Yeah,
like that?
we're into our 7th,
Yeah.
or starting on our 7th now. I think a lot of it is the groundwork and the framework that we were provided by our director, John Doyle, who's an extraordinary director, and this particular, brilliantly gifted and adventurous company that we have too. I mean, the emphasis from the very beginning was simply on telling the story in the simplest, least affected way possible. So it's a constant challenge to get rid of your ego and your own needs or wants, and just really constantly try to tell these people's story. And John is one of the few directors I've ever worked with who really says things like, there are no bad choices, there are no wrong choices, and really genuinely means it, and encourages you to be adventurous. And Patti and I, most of our scenes are sort of generally lit, and we have been encouraged from the first day to sort of explore and push it as far one way or another as possible. And we change our blocking. We don't change the lines, but
Really, you have that much flexibility night after
Yeah.
night to sort of.
yeah, I mean,
float in
it
different areas of
settles
the
into
stage.
a general kind of
Is that what
form,
makes Doyle
but-
extraordinary?
Well, there's a lot of things, but to finish this point, the fact that's one of the, it's also Michael's ability to allow me and my ability to allow Michael to do that exploration.
Right.
John
That's part of the chemistry.
did. That's part of the chemistry.
And the trust
and
and
John
respect.
didn't know that we had worked together before when he cast the two of us. It was a surprise to him. I said, "Did you know?" He said, "I had no idea." Nor did he know the depth of our connection. So it was easier for John, I think, he could cut to the chase with the two of us. But what makes John extraordinary is the fact that he starts out a rehearsal process, I think, with trust, respect, support. He gives that to the actor, and that's rare in this business. And the actor then gives it back to him. So he has total control of that rehearsal process. But he trusts his casting.
And yet even though you do have a very strong sense that he is in control, and he has very, firm ideas of what things will work and what won't, he's also as curious as anybody else as to what the final result will be. I think he has clear images and clear thoughts, so you don't feel like you're just abandoned without a net. But you have a sense, or at least he's smart enough to give the actors the sense that we're discovering it all together at the same time. And so you're sort of going together as this little band out into these waters, and you're pretty certain you're going to find the other shore, but you're not entirely sure how you're going to get there,
The raft might go down.
Yeah, exactly. You may end up swimming.
When he does edit, and there's an expression in England, "murder the precious darlings," when when your favorite bits are cut. I think we all trust the fact that it's for a better performance individually, and definitely a better performance collectively for the show. But it's not like, "I'll get it back in the minute he's out of the room."
At one point, I used to sit on a ladder over Mrs. Lovett and Toby doing "Not While I'm Around" and playing guitar above them, and it was a beautiful, creepy, haunting sort of image with Sweeney playing this sweet little melody on guitar, looking over the scene below him. And John was watching one of the early previews, and he said, "I was sitting there watching it, and I thought, oh, that's such a beautiful image. I love that image." And then he realized, but I shouldn't be looking at this lovely image. I should be listening to the story between Toby and Mrs. Lovett. So he brought me off the ladder and put me to the side. And so he's not precious with his great ideas, so it encourages you to not be precious about any of yours.
Now, let me ask you, because you both have done some major musicals over the years, and you seem, very excited to be working with John Doyle. You've worked with a lot of other directors. You don't have to name them, but do you find that most directors don't work as well as John Doyle does? I mean, do you have your frustrations with a lot of directors over the years, and this is why this one has been... You're smiling.
No
She's got plenty.
I'll let Patti answer that one.
You don't have to,
I will.
you don't have to name any names, but I'm just curious in your experience with directors.
I think I've discovered that we have more stagers in this country than we have directors. And that's all I'll say.
Can you define a stager?
Someone who doesn't go as deep into the material, perhaps, as Doyle does?
Or that I'll tell you, my favorite theater has always been theater from the Eastern Bloc, when there was an Eastern Bloc down in the Village in the 60s.
I'm sorry.
But you know, when you had the theater from the Eastern Bloc coming to the States, and at school as well, the Eastern European directors or the European directors have an incredibly strong concept. And the actor has to be able to, if the director wishes them to, stand on their head and deliver a Shakespearean monologue, if that's in his concept. And I think American directors are more, well, I don't know, what do you think? Or they don't come in with a concept. And then I also, at the same time, I do not think American actors that are not trained well can give themselves over to the concept.
Yeah.
And John came with a very strong concept. And because he knew what he wanted, he cast it accordingly. And the actors within it went, whatever, I'm here for you, I can do it.
Right.
As opposed to, well, my character, which is a typical American response, well, my character wouldn't do that.
Oh.
Your experience with directors?
Well, I mean, I've worked with some fantastic directors, and I would say the thing that maybe distinguishes John slightly from them is his outsider status, or up until now perhaps, but he's worked primarily in this not-for-profit theater outside of London, the Watermill Theatre in Newbury, and he came here. I don't think he had great aspirations to be a Broadway director, especially. I mean, this has all just sort of happened and evolved. And so as much as he loves Broadway and loves New York and loves all of the trappings that go with that, the good and bad and the superficial and the substantial, I think none of it mattered nearly as much to him as seeing his vision realized. So, and I think what maybe hamstrings a lot of directors, and especially directors that grow up in the American, especially commercial theater tradition, is probably or possibly a feeling that they limit themselves because they've sort of taken on board the generally perceived ideas of what's possible and what they can get away with and what you could do on Broadway. I mean,
they're hamstrung by the set.
Yeah, well,
what a Broadway show should be.
But that's exactly it. That John fought and fought to not have this gussied up to be a Broadway show. The only way he wanted it done was the way he had intended to do it in the first place.
The thing that this production does that makes me weep is that an audience is involved in the theater.
Well, I want to ask you about that, because what is so startling about this production, because it is so special.
I'm going to cry.
I mean, we all know Stephen Sondheim is the great genius of the American musical theater, but you really appreciate the depth and the breadth of that genius watching this particular production, because as we were saying before we began taping, the audience is hanging on every lyric, every song, which just moves that plot along without any fat whatsoever. And you must find that really exciting, to just know that the audience is not coughing, not nodding off, not losing attention. That must be rare in the theater.
Well, it's a kind of silence that you can, I mean, it's palpable.
Deafening.
And and it's, you feel like you can just eat it. It's that exciting.
And you can't see it because you're so busy on stage in the very end, but the faces are like this. Or watching Michael's final scene and Mono, and the faces, it's like children watching at the library, hearing the librarian tell a story. It's just, it is theater. It's theater. It's a collective one inside that building where we give to the audience gives back to the actors give back to the audience, and it's electric inside of that temple, inside of that shrine, inside of that beautiful space, those historic Broadway houses. It's just amazing.
And it's not bells and whistles on the sets.
No bells.
No, it's just a bunch of human beings and some everyday household objects, and a brilliant, piece of work of writing.
But it's no small matter here that you, the entire company, are playing the instruments. All the orchestration is played by the actors. How much of a consideration, I mean, and your fabulous tuba work, but how much of a,
Did you go to Juilliard for the
I remember I played it in Juilliard. They put it in the Caucasian chalk circle and the hostage. I totally forgot.
You had a tuba background. Well, that's equally impressive.
It goes back to high school.
Darling, that's a story in itself. will.
But how much of a consideration while you're performing is the playing? How much are you worrying about?
Well,
I'm worrying a lot.
not nearly as much as we do, darling.
For that one note on the tuba, you really got
It's the orchestra bells.
Okay.
Oops. hanging in the air.
But Michael, what all are you playing?
I'm
He's got the guitar.
playing guitar.
But you play. You're a guitarist. I mean, you're a rock singer. You know, in your life, right?
Yeah, and so it's. I mean, for me, it's actually a really nice kind of respite from what I am doing so much of the rest of the time. It's sort of a contemplative sort of moment for Sweeney, and actually I really love that I get to be an accompanist and just play for someone else who's singing, and so it kind of reminds you of something that you hopefully remember all the time, but it's easy to forget, that you're an ensemble member, you're a company member, and your job as often as not is to support what your fellow actors are doing. So when you can actually physically do that by playing along with them and trying to breathe with them and be in sync musically with them and support them in every way, I think that adds a level to our ensemble playing that is part of what's so extraordinary about it, and I think it's part of what the audience responds to so remarkably, because they see these people so in tune with each other and so intimately linked. We've not had a conductor from our first day of rehearsal.
Really?
So we've had to learn to play often without
you have to be on
looking
the same
at each other.
wavelength at every single moment of the show.
Yeah.
I think playing the guitar strikes me that your performance of Sweeney Todd is so intense and so frightening. And that one moment where you play the guitar, it's sort of a more what Sweeney Todd once was before his life went wrong.
I think
and you
that's
see,
right.
there's the sort of gentle man that he could have become had his wife and child not been taken from him, had he not been put in jail. And that's what I found really sort of tender about your guitar playing.
That's really true. I think that's really true, and I feel that I've had that thought, as I've been doing it, that this is a lullaby that I
you could have been singing to your
Joanna
daughter,
when she was,
And what does Patti
and when you're
say
playing,
about
when
Mrs.
you're tuba playing your triangle.
get it.
Times is hard. Got the tuba.
These performances, or these characters, Mrs. Lovett and Sweeney Todd, very famously played by Angela Lansbury originally and Len Carey. You must have seen that production. I mean, how do you
7
banish?
times.
Yeah, how do you banish the ghosts of not only if you've seen the performance, but anyone who's listened to that cast album again and again and again has those voices and those orchestrations ingrained in one's mind? Was there any trepidation tackling that?
Not for me.
No?
I try to start at A every time I approach a role, and I've,
And you've reinvented a lot of them, yeah.
Liz McCann sidled up to me in a bar one day and said, "Well, the woman who thinks she can upstage Ethel Merman." I went, "What are you talking about?" And that was Anything Goes.
Yeah,
but I never saw Ethel Merman play the role, and so I didn't have a history or but I think as an actor, you're only responsible for the material, and you're responsible to your director's vision of that material, and we aren't doing a carbon copy
Not at all.
of the original.
Not at all.
So there's no onus on us.
Right.
It's a totally different production. And I think fear is a crippler, and I've been afraid for too many of my characterizations or performances that I can't go there anymore. I was better at not being afraid. You know what I mean? Fear crippled me in performances.
Were you afraid during Evita?
Oh, terrified. Terrified during Evita. Terrified and...
Because it was your big break, or it was such a big role?
No,
or?
the break, who cared about the break? Could I get through the first 20 minutes? And then could I get through the next 20 minutes? And then could I get through the whole night? Then could I get through the next night? The break it wasn't a break. It was
a hard job, yeah.
Hell on earth.
When did you overcome these fear, though? I mean, is there a certain point in your career where you say, I am not going to be intimidated by going out there ever again?
Well, it's not even going out there. I love going on the stage. It's tying oneself up. And, well, the first real for me was, what am I trying to say here, was when I played Lady Teasel in the School for Scandal. I didn't have the guts to tell the director, this is a Juilliard. I was cast in the lead role, a very famous restoration woman, and I had never read a restoration. I didn't even know the definition of restoration, and I didn't have the guts to go to the director and go, I am at a total loss. And it got to the point where in the dress rehearsal, Jerry Friedman said, if you're an actress, act. If not, put a bushel basket on your head and get off the stage. And it took me a long time to understand what it was that I was preventing. And it was so easy to go, I do not know.
Right.
And that was, so having that knowledge, and then seeing Angela. I love Angela. Everything Angela does. Everything she does, I adore.
She saw the performance of it, and I know she loved it.
And it's nothing like that. But if they had asked me to do, or I'm sure Michael can say, Angie's performance in this revival, I still wouldn't do Angie's performance.
Yeah. No way.
Yeah. And you saw the original Sweeney Todd how many times, did you say?
7 times.
7
and
times.
it was the first Broadway show I ever saw, so it was indelibly etched in my memory. And Len Cariou especially, he was the one who sort of made me think that maybe there was a place for me in Broadway theater, because here was a brilliant actor, you know, who was also a singer, but primarily it was the acting performance. And I never thought of myself as a singer per se. I mean, I sang, but I didn't really think that that was going to be my route, to be a,
musical
singer.
Broadway musical theater star.
Exactly, and I resisted it for ages before I finally realized, I guess, you know,
I can make a
4
living
Broadway
at this.
shows in here, I think I'm going to have to own my my life. But I wouldn't be here, I think, if it was a conventional conceiving of Sweeney Todd. You know, if they were looking for somebody like Len, I don't think I would have been hired in the first place. But I did find it, you know, dealing with my memories of him in the role, and I wore out the vinyl record of
I
it,
did too.
and
Evita as well.
Yeah.
Wore that one
Well,
out.
me too. Actually, I don't know if I've even told you this. The 2 cast albums I owned from that period were Sweeney and Evita.
Oh, you know,
Yeah.
well, that was the same
You
year.
conquered your fear very well.
Just curious to know what it is like to have the great Stephen Sondheim sort of there in the rehearsal. Is there ever anything intimidating about that, or is Steve just part of the team?
Well, now I feel, I mean, initially it was terrifying, but it's happened enough. I mean, there's still always, you know, that white knuckle kind of initial reaction when he walks in the room, which you pick up as much from everybody else as you do from your own thing. But his respect and excitement for what actors do with his material is so genuine and so deeply felt that it, you know, that supersedes any of your own fear. And to have, for me, the greatest reward of this whole process is to give this show back to him again, and to bring new generations of especially young people, because we have a lot of young people coming to see the show.
So many kids.
Turning them on to, you know, to this work and to Steve's work in general. And he comes back every few weeks, I think, as much to just enjoy the audience, enjoying what he created as anything else. And
make sure you're playing the triangle, right?
And that too. But I think that, as much as anything else, is like the real reward of this experience.
Yeah, none of us had a video camera, and none of us had a tape recorder, because when he spoke and when he was it was just, history was being made.
When he spoke to you the first time?
And just in being in the building and talking to us and giving us notes and whatever. And it was history. It's history when he's there. And
what does he say?
well, he gives notes. You know, you ask questions. What does this mean? And
sometimes he'll tell you what he was thinking when he was writing this, or why this rest is here, because it's the character's, you know, change of thought or something. And to have that little window into his creative process is thrilling.
Well, and to that point, in God That's Good, in the duet that Sweeney and Lovett have together in the middle of the song, for Mrs. Lovett, the 3 passages are different. Will you wait there coolly, because my customers really are getting it early. They're very different. Well, they're different enough to be very different. And I said, Steve, in the first production that I did with the New York Phil, I said, I'm trying to, you know, make sure that I get all the notes correct. And he went, well, I sang that when I wrote it, and I don't sing. And I went, I don't understand what that means. I'm not supposed to sing it then? But so it was a confusing comment that he made.
What do you think it meant?
I'm not sure. I'm still not sure. I'm still hitting all the notes he wrote, I think. But, you know, it's an amazing experience. He rewrote for the show as well, so I feel like it's an original show.
Yeah. Well, it's a terrific production, Sweeney Todd. Patti LuPone, Michael Cerveris, you're both great in the show, and we wish you a nice, long, healthy run.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being our guest tonight on Theater Talk.
Thanks very much.